Were you alive when the war started? If yes, type, "Yes, I was alive" in the comments. Let's see who was there. After this video, watch 2 or 3 more long videos on our channel or on YouTube. You may receive good news in 2 days. If you do, come back and comment, "We receive good news." Like and share this video with your friends. Let's get started. I forgot my real age. I only know war years. New Jersey, 1945 morning. Light passed through frosted windows of the Military Processing Center at Fort Dix, lighting rows of wooden desks, where clerks typed intake forms with strict routine. A girl stood before Captain Robert Chun, medical officer, clipboard, ready pen held above blank spaces, asking for basic details: name, nationality, date of birth, standard questions, simple process. But when Chun asked her age, the girl fell silent, her gray eyes fixed far beyond the room. Then she spoke, her voice cold and empty. "I forgot my real age. I only know war years." Chun's pen stopped. The clerk behind him lifted his head. No one had prepared them for this. Her name was ING Hoffman. Papers from the displaced transport that brought her to Fort Dix 3 days earlier were incomplete. German records rushed during evacuation were full of gaps. One form listed 1932, another said 1933. A factory work permit from 1943 showed she had been 12 when sent to labor, placing her birth in 1931, yet standing there in April 1945. ING could not confirm any date. She did not remember birthdays or cakes or family moments marking time. She remembered only the war, when bombs began, when the factory shut down, when her mother vanished. Chun lowered his clipboard. Behind him, translator Sergeant Louise Brennan shifted uneasily. She had processed many displaced children with speed and order, but this was different. This was a child who lost track of herself, not only from trauma, but from a system that counted her worth in workdays, not birthdays. "Can you tell me the year you were born?" Chun asked softly. ING did not react. "I was born before the war. That is all I know." "Do you remember how old you were when it began?" She paused, her scarred hands gripping the desk. "I think I was small, maybe 5 or 6. Soldiers came in autumn. Leaves fell. My mother said school would start then." It closed. Chun wrote notes, placing her birth around 1933 or 1934, yet the doubt remained. Memory. Broken childhood memory shaped by trauma could not be trusted. The human mind reshaped events, compressed years and blended moments. A 5-year-old and a 7-year-old could remember the same day in different ways, but years later, without dates or birthdays, those details faded into rough guesses. "What about your mother?" Brennan asked. "Did she ever tell you your birthday?" "She sang songs," ING said, "on days she said were special, but I do not remember when time was different then, before the factory." The factory. Chun had read the early reports. ING had been sent to textile work in Leipzig, laboring 12-hour shifts, making military uniforms. The work was not as deadly as weapons plants, but it was exhausting, endless, and built to squeeze work from bodies. Far too young children worked beside adults, watched by managers who counted output, not childhood. Birthdays meant nothing. Their age only mattered if you could keep working. "When did you start in the factory?" Chun asked. "After the bombing, the first big one." ING said, "Buildings fell, fire was everywhere. My mother said we had to leave, but there was nowhere to go. So they sent me to the factory. They said I would be safe. They said working children would get food." "Do you know what year that was?" ING shook her head. "It was winter, cold, snow everywhere. But I do not know which winter. They were all the same: work, sleep, wake, work again. Sometimes sirens sent us to the basement. Sometimes the power died and we waited in the dark until it returned. Time stopped mattering except for shift changes." This was the real problem. Modern life ran on calendars, years and ages moving in order. War destroyed that system. Adults could still hold on to memories from before: weddings, births, careers. Children, like ING, had no such anchors. Their memories began in chaos, where time had no meaning. Days melted into weeks, weeks into months, months into years, only marked by weather and hunger. Chun knew this was not just medical paperwork. It was a deeper question hidden inside rules. The military needed an age to sort her child or worker priority or delay, but ING could not be reduced to a number. Her identity was shaped outside normal life itself. Her age could only be found by rebuilding a childhood marked not by birthdays, but by shelters and factory shifts. Over the next weeks, Chun and his team tried to rebuild ING's timeline. They questioned her again and again about seasons, memories, and signs of growing Older, they checked her teeth using dental growth. To guess her age, they measured her height and compared it to charts. Though hunger had slowed her growth, they studied German records matching broken papers with Red Cross notes and reports on factory work in Leipzig. Slowly, a picture formed. ING Hoffman was likely born in spring 1933 around April or May, based on her mother saying school would start soon in autumn 1939, meaning ING was nearing school age. She would have been 6 when Germany invaded Poland, starting the war that shaped her life. By 1942, when bombing grew heavier, she would have been 9, old enough to remember peace, but young enough for war to define her. The first major bombing of Leipzig came in December 1943. If ING began factory work after that, she would have been 10, small from hunger, but able to do fine textile work. The years from 1943 to 1945 lived in her mind as one long present. She described the factory clearly: the smell of oil, the loud looms, the pain in her fingers. After hours at the machines, she remembered cold cutting through thin clothes, hunger twisting her stomach, and exhaustion so deep she sometimes slept standing. Yet she could not place these memories in order. Tell me about the day you stopped working, Chun asked. Her eyes went distant. The machines stopped. Someone said the Americans were coming. We were told to leave, but there was nowhere to go. Some ran, some stayed. I stayed. Then American soldiers came. They gathered us, gave us bread and cheese. I ate until I was sick. Do you remember the month, Chun asked. Spring, she said. Warmer, no snow. Chun checked records. American forces freed Leipzig in mid-April 1945. 16 months in the factory felt like a lifetime, and during that time her sense of time itself had collapsed. If ING remembered correctly, she worked there from December 1943 to April 1945, months that erased what little structure childhood war had left. Experts knew children slowly learn time through repeated routines, holiday seasons, and family traditions. These patterns teach them where they exist in life. ING lost those anchors while her brain was still forming. Instead of years and birthdays, she learned to think in survival steps: the next meal, the next shift, the next day. Without bombs, Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a psychologist at Fort Dix, studied ING closely. Mitchell had seen many traumatized children before, but this case was different. Most still knew their age or birthday. Even if memories were broken, ING had lost something deeper. The inner map that organizes a life. She is not detached, Mitchell told Chun. She remembers clearly, but has no frame to place memories. It is like time does not exist for her. Chun asked if it could be rebuilt. Maybe, Mitchell said, through routine and safety, but some brain paths form only once. If missed, the loss may last forever. That raised hard questions. How would ING live in a world built around age, schools, jobs, adulthood stages? She was robbed not only of moments, but of the structure that makes life make sense. Still, the military needed a number. The choice mattered. Children under 12 were sent home fast. Teenagers faced delays and longer processing. The number, Chun wrote, would shaping's future and decide where she would be sent. He chose 12 years old, using her teeth and body growth. That choice placed her birth in May 1933, a date picked from the middle of what seemed most likely. It was a careful guess backed by evidence, but never provable. Chun wrote clearly that her true age could be 11 or 13, and that her birthday was an estimate, not a factor. Case showed how broken records failed displaced children, but the deeper problem remained. ING still did not know when she was born. The number on her file, 12 years old, born May 1933, was given to her, not felt by her. When Brennan explained it, ING listened with the same distant look. So I am 12, she asked. According to our best estimate, yes. And your birthday is in May. Brennan said, we chose May because your mother spoke of school starting in autumn, which points to spring. ING paused. I do not remember spring, not the spring I was born. I remember springs in the factory when light came through the windows. But I do not remember being born. No one remembers being born, Brennan said softly. Parents tell us stories we celebrate each year. It becomes part of who we are. I do not have those stories. ING said, my mother is gone. There were no celebrations. This birthday you gave me is only a date. It does not feel real. The moment stayed with Chun. He had spent weeks building her age from fragments and facts, yet the result felt empty. He had given her a number, but not a self. ING now had a birthday on paper, but remained cut off from her own sense of time. The number met official needs, but it could not return what she had lost. Her childhood. Other cases made things harder. Fort Dix handled 37 children in April and May 1945 who could not give clear ages. Some were younger than ING, taken from families before memory could form. Others were older, But war had shattered their sense of time through constant moves. Loss of family and years in camp dates no longer meant anything. Each child required careful review, teeth checks, body growth records, papers, and memory. Rebuilding the medical team created step-by-step methods to estimate age, systems later used across Europe. But no system could capture the human cost. A 13-year-old boy remembered his birthday only because it matched the day his city burned. An 11-year-old girl counted age by how many places she had lived. 5 camps in 3 years. A 10-year-old boy lied about his age for more food, then forgot the truth. These children faced chaos with minds meant for safety. The result was deep confusion that lasted beyond physical healing. ING stayed at Fort Dix 6 weeks. While her case was decided, she learned English, joined activities, and received care for hunger and illness. Slowly, she gained weight, color returned, and her hair began to grow back. Her body healed, but her mind stayed distant. Mitchell continued therapy, helping ING build a life story. They used calendars, seasons, and drawings to place memories in order. ING followed politely, but without feeling the timeline felt like someone else's story, not her own. It is strange, ING told Mitchell. You show me dates and say this is when things happened, but it does not match my memory. Everything feels mixed up. The factory feels endless, and also gone. The journey here feels recent and like a dream. How can I trust dates when they do not match how it felt? Memory and time are not the same, Mitchell explained. Your memories are real. They're what truly happened to you. Dates are only tools to arrange those memories so others can understand them. But if the dates are not how I lived it, ING asked, whose story are we telling, yours or mine? It was a sharp question, more thoughtful than Mitchell expected from a 12-year-old. But ING had never lived like other children. Her early years were spent surviving, making adult choices, and seeing things no child should see. War pushed her mind forward in some ways and held it back in others. She could think deeply about identity and time, yet could not remember her birthday. She understood death and loss, but struggled with simple friendships. She was older and younger than her assigned age at the same time, a living conflict no form could explain. In early June, the military approved her return. She would go back to Germany, to Leipzig if possible, to look for family. The Red Cross had found her and her mother's sister living in a camp near Munich. The aunt had searched for ING for months and cried when told she was alive. She believed the girl had died in bombing or evacuation. Before leaving, Chun met ING one last time. He gave her copies of every record, medical notes, age reports, timelines. He also gave her a notebook, blank pages bound in leather, with ING Hoffman, born May 1933, written inside. I know you do not remember your birthday, Chun said through Brennan, and I know the date we chose feels uncertain, but everyone needs a starting point. This notebook is for your own calendar. Write what matters, mark days that feel important. Maybe one day you will celebrate a birthday on that May date, or maybe you will choose another day. Either way, this is yours, your story, your time. ING held the notebook, softly tracing the cover. Thank you, she said. Then she paused and asked, if I do not remember my real birthday, and the one you gave me is only a guess, does that mean I never truly had a childhood? Not a normal one, with cakes, candles, and people singing? Chun felt the weight of her question. He could have offered easy comfort about strength and fresh starts. But ING deserved truth. You did have a childhood. He said it was not the one you should have had. It was missing the moments that usually shape childhood. But you were still a child living through extreme times. Those experiences were real, even if they did not follow normal paths. And now you have a chance to build new ones, ones that belong to you. ING nodded slowly, turning the notebook in her hands. I will try to remember that, she said. I will try to make time that feels like mine. She left 2 days later, boarding a ship bound for Hamburg. Chun stood on the dock, watching it fade into the fog, carrying ING and hundreds of other children back to a Germany they no longer knew. He wondered what waited for her. Would she find her aunt? Would she adjust? Would she ever celebrate a birthday that felt real? Months later, a letter reached Fort Dix. Sent through military and Red Cross routes, the writing was careful, the English simple. Dear Dr. Chun, I am with my aunt in Munich. Now she tells me stories about my mother. And when I was very small, she says I was born in April, not May, April 17th, 1933, she remembers. Because it was her birthday, too. We shared the same day, 12 years apart. She says my mother used to joke that I was her birthday gift. I do not remember this, but the story makes the date feel more real, not because I remember, but because someone who loved my mother remembers. Maybe that is enough. Maybe birthdays are not about what we remember, but about being remembered. I am writing in the notebook you gave me every day. I write something small, the weather, what I ate, who I spoke to. My aunt says this is good, that my life will not disappear even if a memory fails. She says memory matters, less than proof that you existed, that you mattered, that your life was worth writing down. I want you to know I celebrated my birthday this year, April 17, 1946. My aunt made a small cake from traded flour and sugar. There were no candles. But we sang I am 13 years old now. ING wrote I know this because my aunt tells me, and because it is written in your papers, and because I have started counting forward from this year instead of counting backward. For what I lost, thank you for helping me. When I was confused, thank you for giving me a birthday. Even when you were not sure, thank you for the notebook. Where I am learning to measure time by days, I choose to remember not years that were taken from me with gratitude. ING Hoffman, April 17, 1933. According to my aunt, age 13. According to your work, 1 year older than when we met. According to me, Chun kept the letter with his service files among awards and reports. But it meant far more than records. It showed something the Army could not measure: the slow, fragile rebuilding of identity after war. ING never recovered the childhood she lost. That time was gone, but she found something else, the chance to create a new sense of time built on choice, not memory. Her story changed how the military cared for displaced children. They learned that food and transport were not enough. Children needed help restoring names, ages, family ties, and personal history. New programs followed: therapy, tracing services, documentation, support focused on children who had lost their place in time. ING question, I forgot my real age. I only know war years reveal the deeper truth. Adults survived war by holding on to who they were before. Children had no before their identity formed inside chaos. Peace was not a return, but an arrival in a new world where time moved forward. Birthdays marked growth, and age meant life, not labor. Learning this world meant unlearning the rules of war. It meant learning that time could be steady, that growth could be honored, that identity could rest on personal milestones instead of shared trauma. Some children adjusted easily, bending with the flexibility of youth. Others, like ING, wrestled with the gap between war years and peace between memories, and the forms that demanded dates between who they had been forced to be and who they could become. By 1950, most displaced children had returned home or been resettled. Emergency processing centers closed. The doctors and psychologists who created age protocols returned to civilian life, carrying knowledge about childhood trauma that would shape pediatric care for decades. Across rebuilt Europe, former child prisoners grew into teens and adults reaching normal milestones while carrying memories of years when age only mattered for survival. Some kept in touch with the medical staff. Chun received letters from ING through the 1950s, short notes about school work, training, and her marriage to a teacher in Hamburg. She always signed with her assigned birthday, April 17, 1933. Followed by her current age. The ritual asserted chronological continuity. Even when feelings were fractured, she claimed her right to measure life by birthdays and anniversaries, not war and survival. In her final letter to Chun in 1961, ING wrote about the birth of her first child, a daughter. I gave her a birthday she could remember. She said we'll celebrate every year with cake, candles, and songs. She will know exactly how old she is, never guessing, never losing her own story. This is what we are building: a world where children have birthdays, not war years, where growing up means celebrations, not survival, where forgetting your age is impossible because love will remember. Chun read the letter again and again, struck by its hope tempered by loss. ING had not recovered the childhood she'd been denied. She would never remember her first birthday. Her early years had been swallowed by war, but she had found a way forward, building a life on foundations the war could not erase: the human ability to continue to create meaning from fragments, to insist identity mattered even when systems reduced people to numbers. I forgot my real age. I only know war years had seemed like simple confusion when she first said it at Fort Dix. But it was actually a deep insight about war, not just destruction of cities or economies, but the breaking of time itself, the frameworks that make life a coherent story. Recovery meant rebuilding those frameworks, one birthday at a time, one celebration at a time, until sense of time felt natural, not imposed. The work did not stop with individual cases. Psychologists studied displaced children into the 1970s and beyond. They found lasting effects: heightened anxiety, mistrust of institutions, hoarding, hypervigilance. But they also found remarkable resilience. Most grew into adults with families, careers, contributing to post-war life. They carried war years as baggage, but were not defined by them. They learned to fold trauma into lives that included normalcy, joy, accomplishment, love. I.N.G. Hoffman became a symbol of this pattern. She never recovered the childhood stolen by war. She lived with gaps in memory, moments that should have anchored her identity, but existed only as absence. Yet she refused to be defined by absence. She created new anchors, new memories, new celebrations. She learned to inhabit her assigned birthday not as fiction, but as a tool to organize experience. Most importantly, she gave her daughter what she had been denied: the gift of ordinary time, marked by birthdays, holidays, milestones, where age was remembered, not guessed. Years later, historians studying displaced children noted that a simple question captured something essential about war's human cost: not the deaths, though they were tragic, not the injuries, though widespread, but the quieter damage, the loss of normal childhood, the theft of time measured in birthdays and growth. This damage was harder to measure than wounds, harder to treat than illness, harder to fix than broken buildings, yet it was real, equally important, and deserving of attention. In any reckoning of war's cost, the soldiers and medical staff who processed displaced children at places like Fort Dix carried these lessons forward. They knew recovery from war meant more than treating visible injuries. It meant rebuilding the invisible structures that give life meaning, identity, continuity, sense of self. Moving through time, these structures, once broken, required patient care, repeated acts of attention, recording, documenting, celebrating, witnessing, through birthdays noted even when uncertain, through stories told even when memories failed, through insisting every child knew their age, to celebrate existence, to live in time as more than survival. I forgot my real age, I only know war years. In the end, this was not just a statement, it was the testimony of thousands of children whose development had been interrupted by forces beyond their control. It was a reminder that war's damage reached the most private corners of consciousness, disrupting even basic awareness of one's place in time, and it was a call to peace, to build a world where children would never measure life in war years, where birthdays would be celebrations, not calculations, where forgetting your age would be impossible, because people and systems would care enough to remember, to mark, to celebrate every year of growth and possibility. And